Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today, we're going to complete our root cause analysis for the postpartum hemorrhage case. We're going to fill out our fishbone diagram and then discuss some of the questions. We'll also pull in some outside sources throughout the discussion that will complement our study. So let's get started. Our first question, what did our group determine the root cause for the incident to be? Alicia, do you want to begin by answering that for us?
Yeah, so our group agreed that the root cause was a breakdown in communication and escalation of care in the ICU. So the patient's hemoglobin dropped from 7.4 to 5.9, which is a critical change. But the nurse didn't notify the practitioner because he assumed that he would come back and reassess, and his assumption caused a dangerous delay in patient care.
And the delay continued when the resident ordered a stat transfusion but didn't come to assess the patient, even after the nurse requested it. The blood bank had the blood ready in 20 minutes, but neither the offgoing nor the oncoming nurse followed up. So the root cause wasn't just one person, it was a systemic communication failure.
This aligns with what LAN ETL 2025 described about the ICU missing nursing care. They found that omissions often occurred when workflow is high or communication culture is weak. That's exactly what we see here, multiple missed opportunities to intervene.
Yeah, and clinically, this patient was already high risk. She had placenta accretia, which is a major risk factor for severe postpartum hemorrhage. McGann et al. Highlighted that abnormal placentication significantly increases hemorrhage risk during cesarean delivery. So the system should have been prepared for rapid deterioration.
Okay, next question. Was the incident a single point in time or a culmination of several elements?
It was definitely an accumulation of multiple failures. The patient had a known high risk condition, placental accreta, which often leads to a hysterectomy. So, Zhang from 2017 explains that hysterectomies from uncontrolled postpartum hemorrhages is a last resort. And even after surgery, patients remain at high risk for ongoing bleeding.
And after the hysterectomy, the patient's hemoglobin dropped dramatically. That should have triggered immediate reassessment, but instead, the practitioner didn't return, the nurse didn't escalate, and the resident didn't come back to the patient's bedside.
Plus, the blood bank had the blood ready in 20 minutes, but it took over an hour for anyone to start the transfusion. That delay was catastrophic.
So this wasn't just one mistake. It was a cascade of missed care, delayed communication, and a lack of follow through.
Great. So for filling out the fishbone diagram together, I'll read each category and then someone can add the factors. The first category is people. Alicia, would you like to tell us what we have here for people?
Yeah, so under people, I think that we should add the nurse assumed that the provider would return. The provider didn't reassess the patient despite request. Also, poor handoff communication between shifts, and the practitioner didn't follow up after ordering labs.
Next category is process. Soleil, do you want to tell us about that process?
Sure. For process, we can add that no escalation protocol was followed. There was no follow-up on the stat blood order. The delay in transfusion despite the critical hemoglobin result, and a lack of standardized communication tools like utilizing an SBAR.
Okay. The next category is environment. Isabel, do you want to tell us about the environment?
Yeah, so I think under environment, we should add high workload, possible staffing shortages, ICU turnover and shift change timing, and then LAN et al. 2025 specifically linked high workload and poor safety culture to missed care.
Okay. The next category is equipment and supplies. Jenny, do you want to tell us about equipment and supplies?
Absolutely. So for equipment and supplies, I think we should include that blood was available, but it was not retrieved, and no rapid transfusion protocol was activated.
Okay. And the next category is policy and culture. And under policy and culture, we would put a weak safety culture, lack of accountability, no clear expectations for follow-up on the critical labs, and poor interdisciplinary communication norms. So we'll each touch on one point. Where could the outcome could have been redirected? Alicia, do you want to start?
Yeah, so there were multiple points where the outcome could have changed. So first, when the hemoglobin dropped to 5.9, that should have triggered immediate escalation.
And second, when the resident ordered a stat transfusion but didn't come to assess the patient. The nurse could have activated a rapid response or a chain of command.
Third, when the blood was ready in 20 minutes but wasn't picked up for over an hour, either nurse could have called the blood bank.
And earlier recognition of ongoing hemorrhage is critical. Razi et al. Emphasizes that postpartum hysterectomy patients remain high risk for severe anemia and complications, so their close monitoring is essential.
Next question. What is the role of just culture in improving patient outcomes? Alicia?
So just culture focuses on balancing accountability with system improvement. So instead of blaming individuals, it looks at why the system allowed events to occur or errors to occur.
Like in this case, just culture helps us see that the nurse, the resident, and the practitioner all contributed. But the deeper issue was that a system that didn't support safe communication or escalation.
Just culture encourages reporting concerns without fear. If the nurse felt empowered to escalate beyond the resident, the outcome might have been different.
As a unit manager, what would you do? Jenny, can you answer that for us?
Yeah. As the unit manager, I think using just culture model, I would propose a review of communication and escalation protocols. I would require mandatory training on critical lab value reporting, reinforce the chain of command expectations, and have a debrief with nurses, residents, and practitioners.
And this would likely require quality improvement monitoring because we need to track whether communication and escalation improve over time.
Yes, and it could also lead to a new policy requiring immediate provider notification for hemoglobin below a certain threshold.
How can poor culture contribute to negative outcomes? Soleil?
Poor culture leads to a fear of speaking up, assumptions instead of communication, and lack of accountability.
Glan et al. 2025 found that weak safety culture directly increases missed nursing care, and that's exactly what we saw happen here.
Yeah, and when communication breaks down in the ICU, patients deteriorate quickly, like this patient who ultimately suffered hypovolemic shock and a vegetative state.
All right, thanks everyone. This completes our root cause analysis, the fishbone diagram, and we gave valuable insight to our questions with the outside sources. And we're all done.
Thank you.
Thank you.